this again. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you if it's Sunday when you're watching this. It is Sunday for me today. Today we're going to try to quickly run through HTTP and HTML. We finally get to actually make a computer do something. So that is super exciting. Let's get started. All right, HyperText Transfer Protocol. This is the protocol that's used, if you ever go to a website, let's go to google.com and you take a look at this address bar, you can see this HTTPS, which I'm sure you may be familiar with. Some of you might not be familiar with it. It stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. The S is for secure, but we'll get to that in a second. What is hypertext? Back in the early days of the internet, websites were not what they are today. They are were mostly text and links called hyperlinks, and the hyperlinks would lead you to more text and hyperlinks. And there was even web rings, which were just links that grouped a bunch of websites together. But, for the most part, it was mostly just text and links, a couple pictures here and there. I did want to add this in because this is kind of neat. There is this thing called the Wayback Machine, the Internet's Archive, and I've already done this a couple times, so I'm just going to do this quickly. But it allows you to go way back in time and look at what the websites looked like way back here. And let's look at this one. See if this is close to the same one. One of them, there was a bunch of music that just started blaring. So hopefully that'll happen again. I'm not recording audio. Hilarious. I'm not starting over. I'm just going to have to fix the typing thing. I got a new way I'm recording audio in this little guy here. So this is actually very pretty because it's got a lot of images, but you can tell like there was here you go. This'll work. So this is what it used to be. This is just a bunch of text and a bunch of links. This is what it was before. It was just a bunch of selfies and videos of selfies and pictures of food and videos of people fighting each other, burning out in Camaros. It was all just text. All right. That was less fun than I thought it would be. So let's talk about how Hypertext Transfer Protocol gets things back and forth. So let's do this. I was thinking it's kind of like going to a drive-through. I might make this a separate video because I think the idea is fun, but it's kind of like going to a drive-through, right? You go to a drive-through and you pull up to the window and you say, hey, this is what my order is, and that's kind of the same thing of punching in, this is my address. This is what I want. I'm ordering a google.com, please, with a side of fries and a Diet Coke. And then when you pull around to the window, the restaurant itself is the web server that goes and gets all of your stuff together and puts it in a bag, and here you go. Here's your website. So when you hit enter, you're at the window, and there's your website. And you say, what else would you like, sir? I'd like to see some puppies. And you say puppies, and here's my order for puppies, and here's all your puppies, sir. So you've got, your browser. I'm not going to type all this stuff out. I should probably add some text or something. And you've got your web server. Web server. And the real basic rundown is you ask for a request, which is a URL. Oh, this is not a good idea. URL. Uniform Resource Locator. Oh my goodness. I don't know if that's right. And that's not even part of this thing yet. Gosh darn it. Uniform Resource Locator. identifiers URI, Uniform Resource Locator. I just wanted to see if I got one of those acronyms correct. Anyway, you send the URL to the web server, oh, okay, and here is your I'm going to program something in for that. And your HTML gets sent back to the browser. This is it. That's how it works. And then this section right here is HTTP. I'm not even going to do it because it's taking too long. I got to figure out a way to just type things in here. Moving on. Oh, it's right there, Uniform Resource Locator. There's an address bar, www, you're placing an order. So when you're ordering your food, right, or you're sending this URL, you can send more things with it, more parameters, more variables asking for more stuff, and that will change the way the web server cooks your food and sends it back to you. Get into that later. The web server can also save little pieces of information on your computer called cookies. And if you are unfamiliar with cookies, we'll be doing a lot of stuff with cookies. I like chocolate chip. Unfortunately, chocolate gives me migraines, which is just the universe hating me. And it puts a cookie on your browser so that when you go back and visit this web server, it can look for your cookies and use those. Cookies have many, many uses, and we'll get into that, but I wanted to let you know what cookies are, where they live. Inside the server or the restaurant where they process your order, you can have all different kinds of languages running there and databases and stuff to shuck your data back and forth and change it before it sends it back out to the browser. Basically, the web server is where the majority of your website will be created. Most of the work is done there. There's still a lot of work done on the browser side. Back to the drive-through analogy. You could imagine how many things go wrong at a fast food restaurant when you order food. They drop your food on the ground and they dust it off and give it to you. Or, the drive-through window doesn't open. A million things can go wrong. Well, it's the same way in a web server. A million things can go wrong in a web server too. So keep that in mind, that a lot of this programming stuff is debugging and fixing things and finding out why the fryer later has a bunch of ice in it. Why all of the perishable food is spoiled. I don't know. Where am I going with that? I guess now is as good a time as any to touch on this. But like in the web server, this is normally called server side. So it's server side or back end programming. And then this is client side or front end programming. This client side will include your languages that you've probably heard of called JavaScript, amongst many other frameworks usually built on JavaScript. And server side, you can have all kinds of languages: PHP, Perl, Python, ASP, .NET, the list goes on. And obviously we're focusing on PHP because that is what I am most familiar with. HTTPS, and this S here is important because it means secure. You can see this is not secure, but if I go to, I don't know why, that's very boring. I just keep going to google.com, but you can see the S, just like we were talking about before, where it's HyperText Transfer Protocol Secure. And what that does, it encrypts the transmission back and forth between the web server and the browser. I'm going to draw these again. My intention was to not need to redraw this. However, that didn't work out, did it? And the web server, okay? The S shows up here because you have a secure certificate. I can even go to, I'm embarrassed already, so I can go to my website. And you can see, this little lock here. Like, see, this is HTTPS, and I can click the lock, and the lock says connection is secure, and tells you a bunch of stuff. And you can say certificate is valid. You can look at the certificate, and this certificate is commonly called an SSL certificate, and it's what you can self-sign, which if you self-sign is basically you make it on the command line, and you just do it yourself with no authority agreeing, hey, this is a real certificate. It's just one that you make on your server, and you get warnings and stuff, and it's not the best. Mine are done by Let's Encrypt, which is also called CertBot, which is an open source way to create SSL certificates, and that's how we're going to do that in that video when we get to it. You can go to GoDaddy, and this is, oh gosh darn it, GoDad. Stop. GoDaddy.com. I wonder how many Bitcoin miners I have on my computer now. And go to, SSL security. And you can see that, like, these certificates, you can buy them for $70 a year. And I would imagine that it's going to be the same thing that you see here. And you look at this certificate, and the organizations, GoDaddy.com's GoDaddy Secure Certificate Authority. So, it'll say GoDaddy on it. I don't see a reason why it's $70 or $120, etc., when you can do it yourself. However, it's totally up to you. It's your call, your site, your security, your mission, your donuts. I'm not going to explain it too deeply because it isn't super relevant, but it's neat, and it's something that you should check out in the future if you want to. I think I'm going to back up a little bit, and I'm going to say that there's two keys, right? There's this key, which that turned out better than I thought. It looks like a key. And you got this key, like this, okay? And this is the public key. The public key is used on, the public key exists on both sides of the transaction. A public key can only encrypt messages. It cannot decrypt messages. So if I were to give you my public key, which, I guess I could do that. I'm going to jump on this server here, which is not internet facing. There you go. More iMac.pub. So this is a public key. This is an example of a public key. And this is the one that I can give to you or your computer, and your computer can take this and encrypt a message that I can decrypt with my private key. So this private key I don't give to you, because I use this to decode the messages that you used my public key for. And that's a real quick and easy basis of public and private key encryption. Sometimes both sides will trade public keys. Sometimes you'll make a session key where you make this third key where it's just for that session, and then you both use this key to encrypt, and then you destroy it, and then you get rid of it because it was just for a session. But we will be going through public and private keys, and you'll be making keys, definitely using keys to get back and forth on servers. Where am I going with this? Public, private keys. Keys. Right. The most important part is if anybody asks you for your private key for any reason, say, hey, dude, can I see your private key? You say, no. Don't ever give your private key to anybody ever. Never, never, never. I have spoken. All right. Enough of that. This is like the easiest video, and it's the hardest to make. Next slide. HTML, hypertext markup language. Fantastic. Let's get ready to view. I don't care. All right, speaking of not caring, is it a language? I have seen people fighting over this through the years, whether or not HTML is actually a language. It stands for hypertext markup language, but it's more of just a framework. But most importantly, I don't care. I don't care whether or not it's a language or not. It's used and you use it and then it does stuff. So totally up to you. HTML is usually pretty forgiving, and I have an asterisk right here because, you know, there's no easy way to point out how things are or aren't going to work using HTML. You have to be really careful with closing your tags. Like my shirt says "End the Madness." That means that there had to be a "Start the Madness" tag someplace up there, and we're going to get into that with this video. Well, I did say it was poorly scripted. I'm just going to chop this out and put it before I started typing this. It's going to look really weird, but I forgot to mention anything like this. We're going to be using a text editor in the beginning, and then we're going to graduate to an IDE or a development environment like PHP Storm or Sublime Text is a little bit better than a regular text editor. Virtual Studio. Is that what it's called? Dang it. Virtual Studio. I'm sure of it. I've never used Virtual Studio, but I know that I know a lot of people who do. But for now, we're going to use BBEdit in Mac, which is, I think it used to be called Text Editor. Or I'm sorry, no, it didn't. It used to be called Text Wrangler. I think. I used to use Text Wrangler, and now I use BBEdit. But it's very simple. It has a built-in FTP, SFTP, and it's very handy. In the Windows world, I suggest starting with Notepad++. Which, this is definitely the logo. I used Notepad++ for a very long time in the Windows world. You can also just use plain old Notepad, or you could use Dreamweaver if you have access to Adobe stuff. And on the Mac side of the world, you could use Text Editor, but I don't recommend it. So I'll save things as real text, and that's a whole nother video. Okay, sorry for skipping over that. Now we're gonna back to where we were. So HTML is like madness, which is not madness, which is not a real element, and the madness, right? And then you have stuff. This is a really bad example because it's not a real tag of HTML elements. So now that I've played around and joked around, I'm going to do a real one, right? You could say P is a good one, and P stands for paragraph. So this is my paragraph. And you can see that it's got a starting tag and an ending tag. And I'm hoping that a lot of you already know that, but if you didn't, here you go. Browsers are usually pretty forgiving. Like for instance, if I forgot this ending P tag, that might be okay in your situation. If you have style attached to this P tag, then that's going to flow through to the other elements, and that would not be okay. There are some tags like an image tag. Say this is my image.ping, for instance, where it's a self-closing tag. You don't need to put nginx. That doesn't need anything like that. Before HTML5, these self-closing tags, people would put a slash like that at the end of the tag, and that is no longer necessary. This is part of the thing where it's forgiving. It was never necessary. It would still work fine, but it was suggested to put that at the end of a self-closing tag. It's no longer needed. So you just do that. So now we're going to actually do something kind of neat and fun. Accessing files using file. So this is a neat thing that we're going to focus mostly on Mac, but it does work on Windows, and I will show you how that works on Windows. I'm going to pop that into this video. In the Mac world, if you put file : / and hit enter, you're going to get your directory listing, which is the same kind of deal that you see in your Finder. If you go to folder and you just go to the root, of course you see everything. You're not going to see all these hidden things, but applications, library, and such. So we are going to navigate to users and tutorials and documents. And same thing in the Finder, which I also call the funny face program. If we go to, and we can just quickly click this documents and get here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a file right now. And all we're going to say is h1, which is a header tag. And I will focus more on that in a second. And I'm going to say it works and h1. That's it. And I'm going to save it. Control S or squiggly, Command S. I'm not even going to say that. I'm going to save it in documents, and I'm going to say my file.html. Why not? So now that's saved. And then if I go back here and I refresh this page, it shows up right here, my file.html. And if I click this, it works. This is the first and maybe kind of boring example of HTML. Fantastic. Encoding. This is such a confusing thing that it's hard to explain with a lot of depth. I will say that when you save this file, and in today's day and age, you're not going to run into many problems with this. When you go to save it, you have different encoding choices. And most of the time it's going to be UTF-8 by default. But you have these other encodings that may cause issues with your browser. And some characters might show up like a little question mark like that, which isn't a real character. And if you see this, then you have to go and check your encoding of the file that's saved. Usually when I ran into this, the culprits were users cutting and pasting things, data, text from Microsoft Word and plopping them into a form and saving it so that that gets saved into a database. And then once it's displayed on the web page, it's got all these little weird characters that can't be read because the browser is using UTF-8 as the encoding. Or, back before the old standard was ISO 88591, which couldn't show UTF-8 characters. Not all of them. And you'd get this weird question mark guy. Before, when I was talking about encoding, I wanted to put together an example, but I was unable to. While editing this video, I ran into a couple places in the wild where it was happening, so I wanted to show that so that you know why it may be important. I have this, I got this email, copy link. I got this email, and I'm sorry, has Cloudflare is making sure. I need to verify I'm human. Okay. So I apologize for the subject matter if guns make you uncomfortable. Not my intention at all. This is just a website that I ran into that had possible encoding issues. You can see these weird A's that are here littering the text, and this weird, and this actually has the TM next to it, but it still has some other strange characters mixed in with the text. And this is a possible, I'm not sure because I don't work for this place, but it's a possible place where some bad encoding got into their text and no one noticed. And this could have happened by the person or the computer putting this data into their database or wherever it's stored, whether it was an API or it was from a spreadsheet or it was cut and paste from a Word document, for instance, or another word processor. And the browser is not seeing it the same way as it was seen before. And so it shows these weird characters. I found another example here, ironically, in a Macintosh how-to, talking about how to make these strange symbols show up or how to type them. Like you can say in option 2, we'll do a trademark symbol. And you can see that even their examples have some weird encoding issues here. So I thought, we should run through it real quick and put our own example together so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Gotcha. Okay. In that case, SSH, we're going to exit out of here. I have no idea. I don't know if this is going to work out, but I'm going to say, I really wanted to put an example together to show an encoding mismatch between the file that's saved and the browser. So I'm going to jump ahead quite a bit. I'm going to be going through all of this stuff in different videos to teach you how to do what I'm going to jump ahead to do. But for now, I just wanted to show you how this encoding thing makes a difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Terminal and I'm going to SSH into Ubuntu, into one of my servers, SH Ubuntu, if I spell it right. I said Ubuntu. And I'm going to go to a testing place that I have. And I'm going to list encoding anything because I already did one of these, right? So I'm going to use Vim, which is a text editor that's available on the command line, along with along with VI. Can't call it VI or Nano, but we're going to use Vim. And again, go into that later. And look at encoding and see what there is to see here. And you can see that I said this is a test with some weird characters, and I put some weird characters. On the Mac, you can hold down Option and your whole keyboard is full of these other weird characters. 120 degrees, it's normal temperature in Phoenix. And then Escape, Shift Z will save it. So now I'm going to navigate to this, which is sitting on my server, Ubuntu, repo, test, encoding, just like that. Just plain as day, no .html, nothing. I just have that text, more encoding. It's just sitting there, no tags, nothing. And when I navigate to that, you can see that these weird characters show up instead of what I would expect. Like I would expect those trademark characters and stuff. So in this, I have to check this real quick. Okay, so when I add the HTML, then it shows you this. So let's talk about that for a quick second. So this is just a text file. It doesn't realize or try to parse it as HTML at this point because nothing is telling it, not the source code, nothing is telling it that it should be parsed as HTML. So this is how the browser spits it out, as this pre, which is not HTML. I'll explain that later. So what I did is I added HTML and the basic HTML tags, as you can see here, which we'll talk about in this video very shortly. And I just wrapped this whole thing in there. So now it's reading it as HTML, but you can see that these characters are still all friggin' weird, right? So what we do let's clear this for a second. Say vim encoding.html so we can edit this. And in here, we're going to add meta tag charset equals UTF-8. And that tells the browser, oh, you want to process this as UTF-8 as that sort of encoding. And then when I refresh this, I get my funny characters. So that is the example of bad encoding. Back to your regularly programmed video. And then the bomb. Someone dropped the bomb. If you ever see this thing here, this is another thing that doesn't happen very often at all. But if you ever see those characters pop up at the top here when you're trying to load a PHP file, it is called the bomb, which is byte order mark, which you can read all about the bomb on your own. It can screw things up. But like I said, probably not going to run into it, but I wanted to bring it up because if you do run into it, you'll waste some time trying to figure out what it could be. Your Mac, hopefully you're using a Mac. If you're using Windows, I should start with that. If you're using with Windows, then installing a web server on your local machine is a bit harder. If you're on Mac, then it probably already has Apache and we can just turn it on. So I'm going to show you that on Mac. For Windows people, you will be able to, if you want to, you can go to Apache. I'm not sure now. I've been so long since I've used Windows. So you can go here and install Apache. You can also, there's nginx. There it is. Or you can go here. I guess that was the site. You can download and install nginx. I am sticking with Apache because that is what I am most familiar with. However, if you so desire to follow in this local part, then you'll need to install either Apache or nginx on your local machine. It's not really worth it. This whole video series is going to be building things on a web server, on a Linux web server. It has nothing to do with your local environment, so don't feel pressured that you need to do this. This is not a super big deal. I just want to show how you could do it on a Mac. If you have a Mac, and you can open up your terminal, which is under Utilities, Terminal. I am recording, good. And that will open up a window that looks somewhat like this. I think part of my OCD is, I like the black with the green on it. Kind of reminds me of AS400 IBM servers that I used to work on. They're commonly called green screens, and the screens all look like this. If you ever go to Costco, you can see their screens because Costco is very AS400, so is Walmart, and I guess I got used to that one of the jobs that I worked at. So I really like the green on black. Enough about my weirdness, madness. All you gotta do is say sudo apache ctl start. Put in your password, which I think that's it, and there you go. And then go to any browser, your favorite browser, and just put in localhost. And when you hit enter, nothing happens. That's embarrassing. what in the frack? And then it just, I don't know. Stop. That won't work, right? Close that, because that did I need to wait a second? Let's try it again. Sudo Apache CTL start and put in your password. And then do localhost, and it works. I don't know what happened, but that's computer work for you. Sometimes you just like, it's supposed to work, and it just doesn't. All right. So as you can see, we've got our it works file that we just put together in my file, and then we've got it works here, and that's just coincidence because that is what Mac puts on there. So let's go take a look at that. How do we find that in the Mac world? It's going to be something like, etc. Apache 2, httpd.conf or apache2.conf. It could depend on a million different things. So let's go take a look at that file. Say cd etc. What did I say? cd apache 2. And let's ls to look at, then there it is, that httpd.conf. And we can use more to look through here until we find right here, document root. And we can see that it's in library, web server, documents. So let's take a look at that. Say go to folder, and we're just going to put exactly what they have there. Library, web server, documents. And that takes us right to here, and you can see this index.html.en. We're going to open it with BBEdit, a text editor of today's choice. And you can see, sure as poop, HTML, body, H1, it works. And this is obviously, I don't know if it's obvious, this is not a proper HTML layout, but as you can see in the browser, it works. It works just as well. And we can make sure that it works. Yes, it works, man. Save it and put in my password, and now it says it works, man. There's a whole video on command line stuff. This has actually been behind my head the whole time, so I apologize for that. But there is a much quicker way. I'm sorry. I got sidetracked because my head was over the window. What was I saying? There's a whole video that we're going to go through with command line and different commands and ways to navigate around, which is incredibly similar on Linux to the terminal in a Mac, because they are both based off of Unix. So there's a document root. I knew that's what we were looking for before, and you could just as easily just say grep I document root and the name of the file, httpd.conf, and you'd have it right here too, library web server documents. Anyway, none of that is ridiculously important because we're not even going to use that. We're going to stick with the file way of looking at things to start off until we have our web server running. Okay, so we're going to get rid of this localhost tab, and we're going to stay with my file and go back to my file here. We're going to start by putting together an HTML5 document. You're going to hear me say HTML5 a lot, even though that's the HTML that's around now, is HTML5. When I first started, it was HTML4. I can't really tell you what was before that. Not a lot of changes. I could tell you that HTML4 had these DTT HTML4, this doc type that went across the top that looked a lot like this, and they had different ones, a transitional, and I don't even remember now. Nowadays, all you have to have is doc type HTML. So I'm going to show you that, and I don't like leaving this open because they've got so much crap running on the site, it slows down the world. So the first part is doc type HTML. That's it. That's all you got to put. It's so easy. And that tells your browser that it's HTML. Even though your browser is going to parse it as HTML anyway, it's good to have that because that is the standard. Your next tag that you put is HTML. Now, just like we were talking before, and just like my shirt, if you put a tag there, you're going to have an ending tag, end HTML. And then the next section is going to be the header. Oops, hit caps lock. And then, of course, you want to end the header. And then you've got, then you've got your body tag. My goodness, I can't type anymore. And you end the body. Excuse me. Inside the header, you have the title. This is the title of the page, and we're going to call it Cannonball. Is that right? Is there 2 N's? Seriously? One N. Cannonball. Cannonball run. Alright, and then you, how do I want to say this? Because it's not required, but for a true HTML5 document, you should have at least one meta tag, which is char set or character set UTF-8. However, it is not necessary. And then in our body, we're going to say H2, right? So these are header tags. I really should have thought about this a little bit better. We're going to keep this H1. I'm going to start that again. So here we're going to say H1. I'm going to say it still works and H1. And then I'm going to add a P tag like we were talking about before and say this is a bunch of stuff for me to read when I want to read stuff. I don't know. And NP. And I'm going to save this. And it's in the same place as before, myfile.html, which is we put it in users, the name of the computer, documents, my file. All we got to do is refresh this, and it says it still works. This is a bunch of stuff for me to read when I want to read stuff. If you want to ever see the HTML on a site, you can right-click anywhere and click View Page Source. And this, as you can see, is exactly what we have here. So that is your very first HTML file. If you did it, good for you. Oh, right, and then I forgot to point out that this title, Cannonball, is what shows up here at the very top, Cannonball. So you can change that to whatever you want. And this is, well, you want to say Cannonball Run. Excellent movie from the 80s. And there it is, Cannonball Run. So that's an easy thing to change. Let's go through a few more tags before I call this quits. So there is a tag that's called HR. It stands for horizontal rule. If we just add that one tag and notice it's a self-closing tag, so it doesn't need the end HR, and we refresh this, then you got a line, cuts all the way across there. So that's pretty cool. And then let's talk about hyperlinks. And I'm going to start this by saying this is a link to google.com. Oops. If I just leave it like that, because HTML is forgiving, it's going to show up as a link. Oh, it didn't show up as a link. How weird. Okay, I take that back. So every anchor needs to have an href. And this is a very common thing that you'll see if you have just a pound sign here. That's not going to go anywhere. So you refresh this. Now it's a link. And you click this and it's not going to go anywhere. You can see that it adds this pound sign here. And these can be used to navigate around a page. We'll probably get into that later because it's not necessary right now. And then this href equals, if it's not the hashtag, then you can change that to https www. What? I don't know, bing.com. And you save that, and you refresh this, and now it says Google. It's typical, very typical of me to do that. Bing. There you go. This is a link to Bing, and if I click it, guess what? It takes me to Bing. Back up one, go back to my website here that I'm playing around with, and show you another thing. I'm gonna say target equals blank, and then notice this starts with an underscore on purpose. I believe it does work without the underscore. It's just that's the way I've always known it to be. I've always put it there, and it still works this way. If I save this and refresh this page, now if I click this, it opens in a new tab. Easy peasy. Let's look at, let's put another HR here, sorry, and talk about a very, very common set of elements called table. Before I get into that, tables are used for displaying data. When I started working in HTML, a lot of people use tables to design the layout of a website and put things in particular areas, and that is not a good practice to be in. You should only use tables to display tables or what you would see in a spreadsheet of data, of rows and columns. That's what it was built for. That's what it does best. We'll get into how to do some layout stuff, and I'll definitely point you in directions of where to go for layout stuff, but don't use tables for layout. I have spoken. Tables, the next element that's inside of a table is a table row, or TR. And then that's going to be the row that goes across, and then in each table row there's going to be columns, right? And when you're talking about a header, or the very first row, if you want headers, actually I'm going to back up. Each column, and each column is a TD. I don't know what the TD stands for. I know TR is tag defined standard stuff. I was commonly referred to as the TD element. TD. Table data. Table data. Well, I learned something today. TD is the table data, so we can say Bob, NTD, NTD, 1, 2, 3, 4, NTD, TD, 867 5309 NTD, NTR, N table. Okay, so I'm still respecting all of my N tags that are needed there. And you see how things are starting to nest inside, and this text editor will tell you where things are nesting just by highlighting some of these things. So that helps keep everything in line here. So let's save that and take a look at that table. And there you go, there's my data. It's not the prettiest because there's no lines or anything. So we're going to fix that, and there are older ways that I used to do this, by putting some stuff right here inside this table tag, but I'm not going to show you that because that isn't what is best practice these days. So I'm actually going to jump ahead a little bit. I didn't know I was going to do this, but here we go. I'm going to add a style, not a tile, a style tag here, end style. And style is where we can just shuck in some CSS, which stands for cascading style sheet. And it will be, it will tell the rest of the HTML document how I want certain elements to look. We can define this using the actual element, like saying table. If I wanted my table to have a background color of, let's do canary. Yeah, it's not going to help me. Blue. Just say blue, right? It's going to find this table and it's going to make the background color blue, just like that. But that isn't necessarily what we want to do. So quickly, oh, I'm sorry, that's right. I will be going into this more in depth, but because I brought it up, I'm also going to say that you can say class my table for the choice of better words, and then change this to dot my table. And we'll change this to green so we can see the change. And that way, it's instead of looking for the table element, it's going to look for anything with the class my table. And there it's green. So a more realistic, and I should have done this 4 seconds ago, is we could say green BG, right? And have it a green background and make this dot green BG. This dot is going to look for any classes called green GB. We can refresh this and nothing will change. But we can also add this to this p tag and say class equals green BG and save that and refresh it. And now you can see that both of the things have green. This is the proper way to do styling so that you can apply one style to multiple objects in your HTML file instead of having to put all of your style throughout. For instance, this is a bad thing to do, and I'll put right here, I'll say bad so that it's on the screen that you know that it's bad. You can add style right here and say background color green. But this is called an inline style, and this will still work totally fine. It's very much frowned upon. So don't do this. I have spoken. I don't think I like that. Okay, let's go back to our file here. And I am going to change this back to table. And actually, I am going to do this. I'm going to just say TD. I'm going to target all of the TDs that I find. And I'm going to say padding. Give a little room, if you could imagine the cell like this, and the padding's on the inside. And just give it, I don't know, 3 pixels worth of padding. And then a border, 1 pixel, pound, we'll just make it black. I'm going to say black and get into hexadecimal when I get to CSS, and solid. And then I'm going to save this. I guess I don't need this green BG anymore, so let's get rid of that. Won't do anything, but get rid of it. And now I've got some boxes around my data. I'm going to leave it like that, just for the sake of argument here. I'm going to show you how to add another row. You say TR. You know what? I'm going to show you how I really do it. I copy this and I paste it here. And then I say Mary and her, some numbers here. And she lives close, but not as close to Bob. I don't know what I'm saying. And if I refresh that, now I've got 2 rows of data, 1 for each of these. That's pretty simple. And then I want to say, what are these columns for? What does that mean? So let's go back, and at the very top of this table, and we see th, which is a header column, and we can say name th, because that's going to be the first one, Bob. Th is going to correspond to the next one down, and I'm going to say employee number, and then the third one, th, is phone number. Oops, and then my closing, I hope you caught that, my closing tr tag. And I'll refresh this, and now I've got these, but it doesn't have the border on it because that element is a th instead of a td. So in this quick and dirty style sheet at the top, I'm just going to add th, and I'm going to save it, refresh it, and there you go. It matches the same style. So I use the same chunk of styling code for different elements in this table. All right, that's a table. What's next? Let's put another HR right here. And another set of tags I'm going to introduce you to is the unorganized list. So we'll put the end unorganized list here, and inside lists are list items, li. What are we going to list? What are we going to list? This is fun. Looking around for something to list. Cameras, sure. Canon, Cannonball. How did that happen? Pentax, is that still a camera company? I don't even know. What's my other one? Quicker. Sony is one. That's not. It's a P900. Panasonic. It's a lot to type. Sonic. It's not Panasonic anyway. It's the one that starts with N. Oh my gosh. Nikon. I'm a bit crazy. Okay, so I've got my unorganized list here with camera manufacturers. Let's save that and refresh it, and it's a bulleted list. Fantastic. Let me say I don't want bullets. So this is a ranking of my favorite cameras, and I want to rank them by number. Instead of using an unorganized list or UL, I can use an organized list or OL. Right? So I adjusted the opening tag and the closing tag. I save it and refresh it, and now it's numbers. That's fantastic. That's good stuff. All right. The next tag that I started showing a little bit, let's put another horizontal rule in there. When I was talking about, I started showing it when I was talking about the self-closing tags. So we're gonna have an image file. Image tags have sources. So I'm gonna put this source here, and I am going to find an image. How can I get an image in here? I know how I can get an image. Okay. Whoa. All right, so this is Ob Studio. If you've never used it before, it is super cool. I'm going to make a quick image. On Mac, you can hit Shift-Command-4. If you don't know that, it's very neat. And I'm just going to take a screenshot like that, and then I'll put Obs back over here. And then that image is going to be in desktop. All right, there's my image. And then I'm going to go to where I put my HTML files, right? And I am going to actually, let me do this somewhat correct. I'm going to make a new folder, call it images. And I'm going to drag this puppy over here. I'm going to rename this quick image, just so I don't have to type all that stuff out. I think that'll be okay. This doesn't say ping. I guess we'll find out. And then I am going to say image source. And the source Oh. I will show you this. So the source is a path, and the path can start either where the file is running from, which is this folder here, where this is my files, where it's running from. I can just say images/quickimage.png, and I'm going to save it just like that. And I can tell it works because that showed up. And go back to my file, and blah, there's my image. It's huge though, right? So I'm going to quickly add a width to it. Just super simple. Just say 200 pixels. That's pretty small. 400 pixels. And refresh, and there's my picture. So that is a relative path, is that is starting, it's relative to where my file exists. Went right into images and to quick image. There are also absolute paths, which will start at the very root level of where that file exists. Let me show you, if you're not familiar with that, how to take a look at that. On Linux and Mac, you can hit CD and enter, and it'll put you right into your home directory, your user's home directory. And you can say pwd to show you your present working directory. You can see that I'm in users and tutorials, because tutorials is the name of this user. We already know that this is in documents, so we're going to cd documents, and if we ls to list what we have here, you can see that this is the same thing. Here's my file HTML and images. I'm going to go into the images folder and look at my file. There's quick image, and I'm going to do present working directory again, and I can see users, tutorials, documents, images, and I'm going to put that whole thing right here, starting with the slash, users, tutorials, documents, images. I'm going to save that, go back here, and nothing changes because now it's using the absolute path, starting from the very bottom of the directory and working its way through all the folders until it gets to that file. If you have questions about that, ask me, and I'll be happy to answer. It's a bit confusing if you're not used to it, but once you get it, super easy. You can also, you don't have to use images that exist on your server. For instance, we can go to, well, let's just go to images.google.com. And I wonder, how often do you Google yourself? Look, there I am. All these other Freddie Giordano's are not me. Is that? And the book, you remember the book from the other video? Let's take a look at this. Open, link a new tab. So, oh geez, LinkedIn. Image, a new tab. There we go. So I've got this huge link in here. I'm just gonna copy that and I'm gonna paste it right into the source. Think it'll work? I'm not even sure. I'm gonna save it and go back here, and there's that image. So you see, since I started this with HTTPS and have this entire link that I got off of that picture, off of this tab right in here, the URI or the URL, it pulls this image source right off of the internet. That's going to be important. Okay. All right. Comment. Right. Let's comment this out. That's another thing that is super important to know how to work. In HTML, you can start this tag and notice that, I don't know how well you can see that, but it's less than, son of a gun. it's going to be a less than character, an exclamation point, 2 dashes, and then on the other side it's 2 dashes and a greater than sign. And that is how you do comments. I've seen it a million times where people will add the slashes in between here. They're not necessary, but I got so used to doing it that way, that's how I do it. So if you can't see that very well because it dims down, because the editor knows that it's commented out. If I save this and I refresh my page, the image is gone because the engine in the browser is going to ignore that. You can also put in notes, say to do, fix this. I put that in a lot of my code. So you can do that so you can give yourself notes for later when you're working. And if I refresh that, it's not there. Keep in mind, it's still in the browser, so you don't want to put anything important or embarrassing in there, because if you view the page source, you'll be able to see right here exactly, well, my head's in the way, isn't it? You'll be able to see the commented line. I want to show how easy it is to put together a couple things in HTML5, like for instance an audio tag. So let's take a look at this real quick. And behind the scenes, I went and I added these 2 assets. This is a song from Kevin MacLeod. If you're not familiar with Incompetech.com, this guy's amazing. He's got hundreds and hundreds of songs, maybe even thousands of songs that you can use royalty-free in your videos and whatever you want to make. God bless Kevin MacLeod. And then I've got this video that I made in Blender of just this thing exploding. So in HTML, you can simply put audio, and I like putting ID on it for controlling. We're going to do projects with audio and video later, but right now just want to whip this together real quick. So I'm going to say my audio, and then you have the closing audio tag. Oh, and then, sorry, also need to put controls here. And then in here, you can say source, src, just like the image is this src. And then again, just like the images, you can put a relative path, an absolute path, or a path out to the internet someplace. We're going to use relative paths because it's the easiest right now, and say assets / consequence.mp3. And we're going to say type equals audio /mp3. And then inside this audio tag, after the source, you can add a nice little message. You can't do audio tags, it no worky. That's nice. And this will show up instead of the audio player. So let's save this, go back and refresh, and you can see we've got this nice little audio player. It's just boop, it's done. You can hit play and it'll play right in the browser. This is super handy. We're going to make our own music player so that you no longer have to work with anybody else's music player, and you can make it do whatever you want to do. Okay, and I am also going to show you how easy it is to do video. Well, you can't do a video player. Sucker. It's not going to show up anyway, but you get the point. And then I have test MP4. And you can see how similar these things are, right? Video MP4. Save that and refresh it, and there's my video. And I can hit play, and it'll play right in the browser. And it's just that simple. Right, and you're saying, well, that's great that you have all that memorized. I had to Google some of it. How do you find it? You can just as easily just put HTML5 Audio Tag, and there will be all kinds of references. W3 Schools is a good reference, but I've had problems with their page loading too much crap, too many ads and stuff, so I've had issues with that. But if you want to see, how the tags are, and other tags like the video tag is right here. And this, look up any of these HTML examples and tags. Tag list, that's the one I was looking for. Sorry, sidetracked it. So it's got every tag imaginable in here, and you can learn all these tags and look up to say, well, how do I do something? You just go and look it up, because I'm not going to cover everything. A lot of these things, though, I've never even seen used. Like, what is this? BDI, BDO, big? Well, it's not supported in HTML5. Break. I probably should have talked about that. Dang it. All right, I'm going to talk about that real quick because I left that out. Let's go into this paragraph tag and just say I want to read stuff on the next line. You can just put BR as a break tag, and you can see it just puts it on the next line. That is important. I should have had it on my list here, and it's not there. I think that's it for your introduction to HTML. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Like, subscribe, share, tell your friends. I don't know. Leave some comments. Ask some questions. I'm hungry. Ta-ta. Oh, howdy, partner. I'm changing my channel for a little while, and here's what it's going to be about. I've been a computer programmer for almost 20 years. Has it been that long? Oh, God help me. I've had a lot of friends ask me how to code, so I'm putting these videos together in hopes to teach them, and you. I'm starting with about 60 videos, and you can see them all at blog.freddythunder.com/programming. And I will have all of the videos listed here, and this is probably subject to change, but these are the first 61 that I'm planning. And for the very few of you subscribers I do already have, I will still be making videos about the beast, and I'll still be doing music and skits and stuff. So be sure to like, subscribe, and leave some comments or some questions. I'll answer them, maybe.
Ha ha ha, hee hee ha, ho ha 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 ha.